Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Now, if you're fortunate enough to own ray tracing capable hardware, then you can make use of the additional options available in GTA 5 Enhanced. I really like how it looks, especially with the maximum RT preset and ray traced global illumination turned right up. Of course, underneath these fancy new effects still lies a decade-old game, so we don't need a top-tier graphics card like an RTX 5090 or Radeon 7900 XTX to achieve respectable frame rates. I'm playing on an i5-12400F and RTX 4060 here with the highest settings. All the standard options are set to their highest and we're maxing out the RT options as well. That said, I would recommend enabling DLSS quality just to retain at least 60 FPS, or maybe dropping a couple of visual options ever so slightly if you want to maintain native 1920 by 1080 with hardware like this. For the purpose of this video, I'll be sticking with the max settings. Well, actually, the so-called max settings you're seeing here are no longer max settings. The latest update, 1.71, introduces two new visual options on PC. These are high-resolution ray-traced reflections and second ray-traced global illumination bounce, or second RTGI bounce, as you may hear me refer to it as. To enable second RTGI bounce, we need to set the RTGI option to Ultra, otherwise the option to enable the second bounce gets greyed out, as seen here. You're probably wondering what sort of visual impact these new settings have, and maybe, more importantly, what sort of performance impact there is. As I mentioned earlier, I'm using an i5-12400F and RTX 4060. In some cases, this CPU can be a limitation as part of this setup, but in situations like this, where we're utilising ray tracing, the card will often be working at its full potential. I have to say though, I've had the i5 for a few years now and it's quickly become one of my favourite CPUs. It's surprising at how well it still does, especially when paired with a modern entry-level or mid-range GPU. I've also got it paired with 32 gigs of 3200 MHz DDR4. Here's a quick side-by-side. Every setting was set to max, including the original RT options, but excluding the two new RT options. I then enabled the new options one at a time before enabling both. As always, it's going to be difficult to pick up on any differences after video compression, but to be honest, the changes are far more subtle in some areas compared to others. Now, in my opinion, enabling the high-res RT reflections is the more noticeable of the two new options. It's also the more impactful performance-wise. Here are a few performance figures. Again, I started with the highest options, including all the original RT settings set to max. With the two new options switched off, the game ran with an average of 70 frames per second. This is without DLSS, by the way. Keeping things as is and enabling the high-res RT reflections dropped this average to 63. Interestingly, the second RTGI bounce option didn't really cause any performance loss, at least from my Los Santos benchmark run, which involved a drive down a central road through the city, finishing at the edge of the beach. With this in mind, it was no surprise that enabling both of the new RT options at the same time, on top of all the other already enabled RT options, only dropped our average to 62. So we're not really losing that much in the grand scheme of things, especially as the percentile lows still remain pretty consistent, so the experience is still smooth overall. As I said before though, I'd recommend enabling DLSS if you want to max everything out, just to account for the sub 60 FPS dips and drops. I happened to capture some really great looking footage that was like a throwback to GTA San Andreas on PS2, you know, with the deep orange colour skies. I almost want to put my sunglasses on. I'm thinking that maybe Rockstar are playing around with options as practice for GTA 6. Of course, at the time of this video, we don't know if or when that will come to PC, but I like to think that they're seeing how certain things look and work before implementing them in the next game. I'm warning you now, you might not see me for a while when that does come out. I wonder what the PC requirements will be. I hope we can turn it into a blurry, smooth, textured mess for the sake of running it on weaker hardware. Speaking of weaker hardware, I thought I'd test my 8GB RTX 3050. Now the 8GB version is superior to the newer 6GB version because not only does it have more VRAM but it has more cores as well. It's essentially like a different card. Now in the UK you can get the 6GB version of the 3050 for cheaper, brand new. It's probably quite hard to find an 8GB card brand new now, but you can actually get a used 8GB version for cheaper than a new 6GB version. So it might be worth doing that if you want an RTX 3050, but alternatively the RX 6600 from AMD has always been the better card in terms of pure native non-ray trace performance, and that can be found for similar money as well. But it's up to you and whether or not you want the Nvidia or AMD features. Anyway, I'm getting distracted. Now, of course, the 3050 is not a weak card in the traditional sense of the word. It's no GT 710, of course, but it is close to the bottom of the pile of the RTX stack. I definitely recommend lower settings in GTA 5 Enhanced here, but that said, I was able to stick everything on max, albeit with DLSS set to balanced, and still get a half decent experience, and the game doesn't look too bad either. I didn't really do any in-depth benchmarking, but for most of the time we were seeing between 45 and 60 frames per second, sometimes higher. Now in and around coastal areas and towns, this shot up to well over 70 FPS, sometimes even higher than that. We even saw 90 or 100 frames per second every so often, though admittedly I was in the middle of the ocean, so this probably isn't going to be where you'll spend most of your time in GTA 5, unless you like swimming around in the middle of the sea, but of course that's not for everybody. Now I'd suggest trying out these new options to see how they impact performance with your setup, because I've made a few 4060 comparisons here and that's it really, so it would be interesting to know how frame rates are affected elsewhere. If you have tried it, of course, let me know how it runs for you in the comments. As I said before, it can be a lot more subtle in some areas than others, but if I had to choose between both options, I'd probably just stick the the high-res RT Reflections options on and perhaps leave the second bounce RTGI option off. To be honest, if you want the most noticeable difference in visuals with ray tracing, then you're probably going to want RTGI on. Now the difference between having that switched off and switched on is night and day in some areas, as I probably showcased in my original GTA 5 Enhanced video, where we tested the 4060, I believe. I've also tested the low profile 6GB 3050s, and I've got another few cards I'd like to retest with these new options as well, but thought I'd try this out because I saw the update this morning, and hopefully this has been helpful. So as always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this one, leave a like on it down below. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already and you want to, of course, and hopefully I'll see all of you in the next one.